Hello and welcome back to the ROKER Report Extra podcast. Sunderland have picked up 4 points from their last 2 games and head into a crucial January period that will surely decide our fate this season, be it mid-table obscurity or getting the promotion push right back on. Our first foot at the Stadium of Light is a side who did actually put the final nail in the coffin of the Jack Ross era, Lincoln City, and we have Joanna with us from the Lady Imps to discuss everything Lincoln. How are you, Joanna? Are you alright?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. First and foremost, some people might be wondering, what is the Lady Imps? So I will ask, what is it and what does it entail?
Okay, so Lady Imps Supporters Association, also known as L.I.S.A. It began March 2017. A fan who was kind of new to watching Lincoln kind of just put a post on Facebook kind of saying that she was new to kind of watching Lincoln and had fallen in love with Lincoln, and just asked if anybody would be interested in kind of being part of a kind of a lady-only supporters group. But we've kind of grown since then, and we're quite open and inclusive. And it's basically, I think it started at that point back in 2017 with about 800 members. And we've now got 1,200 members on Facebook and Twitter, with about 140 paid up members. So it's kind of any gender, but it'd be true to say that most of the members and the kind of followers are women. And it's about encouraging women to kind of get involved in watching and loving Lincoln, and kind of that sense of being able to talk about football and show that passion without kind of made to feel that you shouldn't kind of be enjoying it or you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think, people listening to the podcast will know that I've extensively covered a lot of women's football this year, especially with the Sunderland ladies who have done fantastically well. And I believe the Lady Imps does cover the men's and women's team. It's the whole thing, isn't it? It's Lincoln as a whole.
Yes. Yeah, we're official supporter group for Lincoln City Women. So there's a lot of Lady Imps who also now follow Lincoln City Women, and the L.I.S.A group as a whole are pretty active on generating kind of support and interest at the Lincoln City Women game. So we're trying to push that game and promote it as much as possible. Yeah.
And one thing I quite liked about Lincoln, I had Michael Horton, which I believe is from the BBC, who covers Lincoln around October time during the last game. Just before then, I had him on the show. And I think one thing I really, really noticed about Lincoln is it's not just been recently, it has been since sort of you had the Cowleys in, I would say. There does seem to be a big community element, to Lincoln City as a whole. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, I've seen the change. I mean, I've only been supporting Lincoln 6 years now, but I've seen a massive change from 2,500, 3,000 now up to we've just had 2 10-plus sellout games, and that just the diversity there in terms of not just women but families, and that it's just a welcoming place, but that how Lincoln itself has kind of taken the club to heart, and how the club they're just out and about in the community. And I think the Cowley brothers were, I think that they gave that a big push and worked on something that was kind of there bubbling under, but it's even more so now.
I think I'm probably not the only one saying this, but I've been to a few League One grounds this year, and Lincoln did feel very, very friendly, very family friendly, and very welcoming sort of before the game. But it certainly didn't stop the atmosphere inside. It was absolutely bouncing and almost quite fiery. And as bad as we were, I have to admit, it was a cracking atmosphere in that sort of corner near the away fans. It's absolutely bouncing, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've got to give the 617 group credit for that. They're the kind of the heartbeat, I suppose. They keep it going, and they've been around for a while and kind of keep the singing going and keep the mood up regardless of the kind of what's happening on the pitch. So I think that and it kind of ripples all the way around the stadium. I mean, it was absolutely, well, as you can imagine, with our sellout crowds, it's been absolutely electric the last 2 games.
Yeah, it really was a cracking atmosphere, and I think one of our games was that when we went there was sold out, and obviously you won, and we played terrible, and you played really well, but it was particularly good that day. But when I was speaking to Michael beforehand, I think you'd just lost 6-0 at home to Oxford, and he still spoke about the atmosphere then and said, they never really stopped. Everyone sort of
No.
accepted that it was one of those games where things sort of happened. You just lost the Cowley brothers, but it was still the same level of intensity the whole way through, and there's definitely something to be said for that because no offense to other League One clubs, but it's not always like that when I've been away from home. Sometimes it's a bit like a library.
Oh yeah, we're surprised. I mean, I know I can only talk for myself, but I'm surprised that supporters don't continue to back their teams when things aren't going so well. And I think that's something to be said for Lincoln, is that we will back our team regardless of what's happening. And we've had a little bit of a blip when we lost the Cowleys, but I think I'd certainly say that most of the supporters have now moved on and are supporting Michael Appleton.
It's quite funny. Last time we did face you was actually, Jack Ross was our manager at the time. It was his last game, as it ended up being. And your man of the moment, obviously, the Cowley brothers, had just left. I think it was probably too early last time that I spoke to a Lincoln fan about how things had been under Michael Appleton. But now that it's been a good few months, how have you personally found sort of the season going under Michael Appleton, and what are your feelings towards him?
Well, I actually like him. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know much about him until he came to us, and I think that he's brought something different to us. And I think if people were honest, then I think things weren't going well towards the end of the Cowley time with us.
Yeah.
I think that Michael Appleton has brought a different style of football, and I think the team are slowly kind of bringing that to the field now. I think he's a more possession-based manager. That's the kind of football he wants. I think there's obviously more playing out from the back. I think we're kind of less physical and more finesse, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think it's a kind of like it's almost like they've got a freedom to play proper football.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you can understand that. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. And I think that, and I think there was some criticism early on, but I think that's from people who were just still swept on that kind of Cowley wave of winning and doing well. And I think that we've had to kind of get used to, being in League One and that kind of experiencing that step up from League Two, and kind of just the difference, and that I think now we're starting to reap some of the rewards of that. Really, we've had to be patient, and I think things will only get better now, and I'm pretty confident that we'll stay up. And I think that we're seeing some really good football, and some of the games haven't gone our way, and I think we've lost a little bit of luck. I mean, I think we had a lot of luck over the Cowley era as well.
Yeah.
And not taking away from the fact that do you know what I mean? We did exceptionally well, but you have to have a little bit of luck, and I think we're getting a little bit of that back now, and getting some good results. And even on some of the games, we had a run of losses, but it kind of felt like we only just lost them. Like there were some late goals, and we didn't lose by many. Yeah.
I think what I've noticed about Lincoln as well is obviously you absolutely stormed the first month of the league. I do like a League One review sort of every month, and Lincoln was the big story, truth be told. But I do find that sometimes there is that progression when you are building so much, like obviously coming from the National League, coming up to League Two, absolutely dominating League Two the season before you came up. And then you come into the league and you have that kind of follow-on where the progression just builds and builds. And obviously things were really positive under the Cowley, and it seemed like a really positive club. But then I think when Cowley left, the way that he was held in regard, maybe even outside of Lincoln, and the positivity that came throughout that era, and the transition into a new, much higher league than you've been in previously, is quite a lot of things to take on board. But some people might look at it and say, well, they started off really well and now they're suffering. Yes, it was blistering form at the beginning, but you've came through, as you said, that tough run of form, and you're now 17th. 17th sounds like it's close to the relegation, but I don't think anyone necessarily outside of Lincoln expects you to be there near the end of the season. Are you very confident that you can steer clear of any real danger?
Yeah, and I think we're 16th now, actually.
16th. Terrible
I
research
think we
from
might
me
be
there.
16th. I also think that it's kind of the kind of the games we've had. We've had a lot of away games, and I think the second half of the season now we've got a good run of home games. And as you've already commented on, our kind of home support is massive, and I think you can't underestimate the impact that has on the players and the team performance. So I'm confident that the kind of the next kind of run will take us a little bit further up the table. But I don't think any of us. Well, I'm not kind of looking at a kind of another promotion bounce, but actually being comfortable in the table and feeling like that we're competing with our peers would be a good end of the season for me.
And I think you've touched on the home form as well, especially. And I think I'm someone who very much likes to look at home form, away form. I've got a thing for numbers for some reason. And Lincoln, probably good for Sunderland fans to hear this, but you're coming on the back of two hugely impressive victories, both of them at home. A 5-3 win over Ipswich, and that's, I know he conceded 3, but 5 goals against, let's be honest, probably on their day the best side in the league. And Peterborough, who I think have been, yes, they've dipped a little bit, but that they are a cracking side with a great front three. Obviously beating them, which would have been yesterday. But away from home, I think I could be slightly wrong with this, but it looks like there's only one away win in the last 12. So the home form is huge, but I suppose with the away, Sunderland being at home and you being away on Saturday, is the away form a little bit of a worry?
It is, but I think we've got to be thinking positively after the last 2 games we've had, that actually an away win is possible. We're on good form at the moment. Walker, our main striker, he's something like he's the 5th top scorer in the league.
Yeah, he's quite far ahead. Yeah, and he tore us to pieces last time.
Yeah, we've got to be positive about that, and just things seem to be coming together. George Grant had the best game, I think, of his Lincoln career yesterday. We've got Morel, who a Welsh international again, possibly again his best game in a Lincoln shirt yesterday. So I think we've got some real threats. And if we press with Walker up front, and then with other pressing players, and also some of the experienced players that we have who produce, such as Erdley, some amazing balls up to Walker. And if they pay off, then I think we're on a good run.
And it is a good side. I mean, looking through the team, there is a couple of loan players there, but that is very much like a League One way, isn't it? There's a lot of loan players across all divisions. But one thing I did notice, there was a player that I don't want to say impressed me, because he actually worried me more than impressed me with his pace against us in the game at Sincil Bank, which is Bruno Andrade. But just after I realised that he wasn't playing and he has been injured, I noticed that the person who's replaced him, which is Anderson, has been doing very, very well as well. But you've also got the lad from Southampton, Jake Hesketh. So, like, across the team, like you say, there is a lot of experience there, but it really is the young boys like Walker and Anderson that are really bringing probably the biggest threats to the other League One teams at the moment. Harry Anderson looks particularly on form at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's what Michael Appleton is encouraging as well. I think he's certainly one for progressing youth players and the younger players. And I think that, Anderson, he's been with us a while now, and I think I don't like criticising any players, but I think Harry Anderson has good and not so good games.
Yeah.
And I think when he's on form, his kind of like his pace and his ability to run at players is amazing. Sometimes that pays off and sometimes it doesn't, but he'll always give it a go. And you'll often look at him and think, oh, he's kind of like, he looks exhausted. He looks like he's ready to be subbed, but then all of a sudden he'll just kind of like I say, just kind of run at the opposition and just kind of be a goal threat. So yeah, and Hesketh, I think some fans have maybe kind of questioned his ability, but I think he's just kind of like improving every game.
I think when you look through the team, the age as well, it's not like you got a bunch of teenagers. They're all at fantastic ages as well. I mean, I think Tyler Walker's 23, Hesketh 22, Henderson 22, but there's also a left back. That I'll be honest with you, I know more about him because I actually, another player that I signed on Football Manager once upon a time, but it was Harry Toffolo. I think I'm pronouncing that right. But he obviously came from Norwich, didn't play too much for Norwich, but played consistently for England under 18, under 19 and under 20. And he's another player, 24 years old, and he's one of the older players in the team on average. But you've got a good set of players that are not just teenagers at a good young age, 23, 24, just about ready to hit their prime. The one thing that worried me about Lincoln when we played you, and every single time you got the ball, wasn't necessarily the ability, it was just the pace that really worried me. Do you think pace is a massive part of Lincoln's armour, or have since we last played you kind of got other things to your game that could damage us, do you think?
I mean, I think part of that pace was built through Danny Cowley. And I think kind of that fitness level. And I think it was something that certainly has improved since the Cowleys came, was actually looking at the fitness of the players and kind of like getting the best out of them. And we'd often have games where the opposition were literally flagging, but we were still going and pushing, and we were getting lots of kind of last minute goals. So I think fitness is something that the Cowleys started, and that's kind of we're reaping some of the rewards of that now, I think. And again, with some of those, as you say, younger lone players that are kind of almost hitting their peak, and kind of, I mean, I heard Joe Morrell do an interview the other day and saying that kind of like he's been picked. He believes that part of being picked for Welsh International is because of the playing time and the games he's getting with Lincoln and the fitness levels and on all of that. So there's been some really good work done at Lincoln from that angle, absolutely. So, and I think, so I think that's kind of part of what we bring. Clearly Walker and his goals. And like I say, some of those kind of older, experienced, certainly in the defence.
Like Bostwick
those defensive players like Bozzy. Yep. The beast that is Bozzy.
he's 31, I believe, but I could be wrong. But was he? He's well seasoned in this level, isn't he? I think he started at Millwall, and then I think he kind of mainly came to the fore at like Stevenage, but then had a really good 5 years at Peterborough. All good teams at sort of League 2, League 1 level. So he brings with them a wealth of experience, doesn't he? And that kind of experience really helps players like 20, 22, 23. It seems like a really good blend, and you can sort of see why there's been so much success.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's that combination that absolutely we certainly is performing well at the moment. Yeah, for sure. Who knows? We're obviously into a little bit of an unknown period now with the transfer window, and we don't know what it will look like, I suppose, as the weeks evolve, but we can only hope that it will get better.
Is there any players that, obviously you've talked about loan players, and one of ours who no one's disappointed about losing him, to be completely honest, was Lawrence de Bock. We brought him in, I think his league debut was actually against Lincoln, and he got tortured by Bruno Andrade. But he's gone back to Leeds because he wants to make a permanent move back to Belgium. But I think across the board, there's a lot of clubs in League One that maybe get loan players up until January and then worry that they might go back. Has any of your loan players, to your knowledge, got recall options, and is there anyone that you're worried about particularly losing for being recalled by the main team?
Yeah, I think there's concerns that Morrell might go back to Bristol.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that he's signed a new contract with them. And obviously with his international call-up and him playing so well, that's always a worry.
And they got
Walker
4-0 yesterday,
scoring goals.
did Bristol City. So they might want a few reinforcements, shall we say.
Yeah. So I think, but I suppose for me, it's kind of, it's a worry, but it's the same for everybody. And I kind of think that it's one of those things that it will all come out in the wash, hopefully, and actually that we're still in a good position, and whatever we lose, that we get in, if that makes sense.
And
so we balance it back out again.
I mean, John Akinde, obviously, I think he's got about 5 goals, but most of them have came from the bench, and he was your top scorer last season. And I suppose if it wasn't for the fact that Tyler Walker's hit the ground running as well as he has, you could probably have gone ahead and played with Akinde. So worst case scenario, you do lose someone like Tyler Walker. There is maybe not the same sort of player, but there's a replacement there.
Yeah, I think that's the area that we're lacking in, though, to be fair.
Okay.
I think we need strengthening in the attacking part of the field, really. It's only really, like you say, Akinde and Walker, and as you say, they're very different, and I think that John certainly made an impact. John Akinde certainly made an impact on the game yesterday when he came on. It's almost like he's a tactical substitute, I think, really.
Yeah, because he's huge, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a big guy.
Yeah.
Whereas Tyler Walker's all about pace, speed.
And getting into position. And John will take a few kind of players out the game, almost. So I think, he brings something different, and I think it's more about him coming off the bench, but we need somebody who we need more than that.
Yeah. On to Sunderland a little bit. I've been asking this question more and more the longer we've been in League One, which is probably unfortunate for us. And trust me, nothing you could say here would surprise any Sunderland fan, I don't think. But I imagine you were at the game against ourselves in October. Were you surprised by how poor Sunderland were, and are you surprised how much we struggled?
Yeah. I suppose I expected more, but it's football. And it's kind of that. It just kind of feels that's how it goes. You take the rough with the smooth. I think ultimately I didn't think that we would win. But yeah.
It was a good day. I did enjoy myself. That was I went down with Tom White of Sky Sports fame. Had a good day with him, and we went in the bar beforehand, and it was all brilliant apart from the 90 minutes sort of on the pitch. And I think that's when, to be honest with you, I think a lot of Sunderland fans listening, if they remember back to that day, I think a lot of people thought that was kind of like the straw that brought the camel's back with Jack Ross, and as it appeared to be, he was sacked shortly after that, a few days later. But then things have just got so much worse for us because his replacement's been just twice as bad. But the home form, to be honest, we've only lost one under Parkinson, but we've just drew a lot and not been very impressive, and have suddenly started playing 5 at the back. So I don't know what Sunderland side you're going to see on Saturday. To be completely honest, I can just hedge my bets. It's probably not that much better, if at all better, than the one that you saw at Central Bank. To be honest, so maybe you can get a back-to-back victory against us.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm not expecting it to be a goal fest, though.
No.
I think we've kind of I think we'll get a win. But I'm going for a 1-0 win to Lincoln on Saturday.
I've looked through your results and talking about sort of your away games. We don't score too many either, to be honest. But sort of away from home, I think you drew blanks in the past 2. I think it was Coventry. I think I was looking at you played, and then somebody else as well, Oxford as it was. But I mean, both good sides. Don't get me wrong, and both of them were only 1-0 defeats. But you don't score too many away from home. Do you set up differently away from home than you maybe would at home?
I don't believe. I mean, I think that up until this festive kind of run, I think there's been changes in the team.
Yeah.
But I feel pretty confident that Michael Appleton will put the same team out as that we've had over the last 2 games. The only difference is I think if there's any new signings, I think there's a potential for maybe if it's an attacker for them to be on the bench, maybe. So I think it will be pretty much the same kind of formation, the kind of 4-2-3-1 kind of setup. I can't see, because we've played so well, I can't see him changing unless there's any kind of injuries or anything that I don't really know about. Because O'Connor went off yesterday, and I'm pretty sure that was probably injury. That could be where any change might be.
Yeah, I mean, looking through the team, you play very similar to what we used to play under sort of Jack Ross. I think you've got Vickers obviously in goal with a back four, Eardley, Bostwick, Bolger, and Toffolo. Then you've got sort of Connor and Morrell sitting, but then you've got that really pacey attacking front four of Anderson, Hesketh, Grant, and Walker. You mentioned George Grant yesterday. He actually got the win in the last minute, which I think he started quite well, didn't he? But he, like a typical winger, he had a couple of month ways off the boil. But is he a player you're expecting to be bang on form after yesterday?
Oh, yeah. And I think that also he's changed position slightly, thinking more in the middle. And I think prior to that, I think he had quite a lot of assists. So I think assists-wise, he was doing pretty well, but maybe not showing, almost kind of not getting that finished product. But I think that free kick yesterday, hopefully, now he's kind of on the score sheet, will boost his confidence. And he was my man of the match yesterday. I'm just kind of like in awe of some of his play. It's amazing.
The thing I find quite interesting about sort of your forward line, your number 10 or winger if you prefer, and your centre forward George Grant and Tyler Walker, is that they both the same age and both came from Nottingham Forest on loan. Did they both come at the same time? Was that like a double purchase, as if like you were going to spearhead the season with those two because they would obviously come through the ranks together, because they do work together quite well? I watched your first sort of 3 or 4 games of the season, and them two were just working together perfectly.
Yeah, and I think they'd both been at Mansfield at the same time as well, I think.
Oh, so they were. Yes, that's absolutely correct, yeah.
So I think Walker was he top scorer for Mansfield, I think, in the short time that he was with them?
Yeah, I think he scored 22 goals in total, which is not bad by anyone's standards.
Yeah, I think they're on they're on different kind of deals, but I think they may have come about the same time. Yeah.
Because there's definitely
a
telepathy, I think is the right word there. Trying to get the right word there, but I couldn't quite get it. But you've already touched on, you feel that it will be a win for Lincoln. I'm going to go, I think, a draw. We love a 1-1, so I think I'm going to go 1-1. But if I had to push you for a scoreline and a scorer, what would you go for?
I spoke to my son about this. I'm rubbish at predicting, so I had to go to him for this. And I actually don't like predicting. But my son is saying a Lincoln win, and he's saying a Walker penalty.
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, I don't know if you've seen our game yesterday, but we give away a penalty, and I say that in inverted commas. It was just 2 lads fell into each other. It was the most ridiculous penalty I've ever seen. So allegedly, League One referees just like giving penalties for, I don't know, passing wind. So it probably will be a penalty for you, yes. But are you coming up on Saturday, or are you giving this one a miss?
No, coming up Saturday and staying over.
Fantastic. Are you staying over in Sunderland?
Yeah, staying over in Sunderland. Fantastic. And then hitting the shops on Sunday to spend Christmas money.
Well, I hope you have an absolutely fantastic time, Joanna, but thanks very much for coming on. I hope you don't have a good 90 minutes between 3 and sort of 4:45, I'll be honest with you, but outside of that, do enjoy the city. It's not what people tell you it is. It's a really, really wonderful place. And thanks very much for joining us.
Well, thanks very much, and I'll be one of, I think, about 3,000 Imps heading up the A1 on Saturday.
Not a bad following, that. Not compared to some League One clubs, mentioning in no names, MK Dons. But thanks again, Joanna. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks very much.